Greetings, Sabbath fans, and here we are by the much anticipated, no doubt, attempt at a Black Sabbath ranking the albums of. Now, anybody who's seen my introductory video to this, I'm going to try some different approaches to give these otherwise arbitrary lists of rankings some wider context and hopefully some deeper meaning. We will see. We will see. So the first attempt, as I already outlined, I'm going to do this with Black Sabbath. I'm going to try slightly different approaches, perhaps with Rush and Deep Purple. But for now, it's Sabbath that's on. Now, just some preliminaries, I should say. This is obviously, these are just ranked within the Sabbath canon. There's no comparison to anything outside of that. It's, from 1 to 20, I think. How I find them and why. I will do my best to explain it. Secondly, I was debating with myself for far too long whether to include The Devil You Know, the album that the Dio lineup released under the Heaven and Hell moniker. Generally, I believe I judge something by what it says on the cover. However, after much deliberation, I'm of the opinion that because of the people involved and the nature of the result, the way the album is, this is a more authentic Black Sabbath record than, for example, Slaves and Masters or Come Taste the Band are authentic Deep Purple records. So for that reason, I've decided to include it. Not that I have to say that it would have made much difference. Okay. So what's this wonderful new idea I've got? Well, I've broken this down into 5 categories. Okay, first one being disappointing. So within the context of the band's canon, okay. So there's disappointing. Category 2 is solid but unspectacular. Category 3 are left field outsiders. Category 4 is almost perfect. And Category 5 are those indispensable. And I've got a fair, actually, spread here, which some may find bizarre, some may find offensive, some, hopefully, will at least find interesting. Okay, so, firstly, those that have disappointed, or I found disappointing, there are 3. And I suppose it's also fair to say that within these categories, they have been also ranked. So the first one I mentioned is probably going to be, the lesser of each category. Generally, I think if there's an exception to that, I will try and mention it. Okay. So where do we start? We start with 7th star. It is neither fish nor fowl. It was produced at a very uncertain time in the band's career. It should have been a Tony Iommi solo album. But even there, it does not succeed. It is far too middle of the road, safe, predictable, unspectacular, solid as it may be. It doesn't convince as a solo album. It is not outre enough, it's not different enough, it's not experimental enough. This is the guy that wrote Air Dance, amongst other things. Not only Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. We know what he can do. There'd be no pressure on him. Just release the bloody thing. Come up with a more interesting record and release it. He didn't. And as a Sabbath album, it doesn't really cut the mustard. Apart from the title track, which is a great Sabbath-sounding riff, great Sabbath-sounding song. Yeah. The rest is just, it's too hard rock. It's too mundane. Harsh, but it's true. This was not helped by not the title of the record, but the band label given to it. And one has to wonder, what marketing genius came up with this one? Black Sabbath, featuring Tony Iommi. Process that for a bit. And imagine the next time you're going to spend an evening in the theatre, going to watch a production of Hamlet, billed as featuring the Prince of Denmark. Do I need to say more? This is ridiculous. It should have been a Black Sabbath record, and well, okay, we've changed tack, we're experimenting, but it's a Black Sabbath record, or it should have been an Iommi record, and we could have judged it accordingly. I'd have judged it badly in both ways, but maybe others would not. This ridiculous labeling of it, I'm sure it did not help it. Lots of other things did not help it, but that most certainly didn't. So that comes in, I have to say, first. My second entry in the disappointing category is 13. Although I was not expecting much. So the degree that it was a disappointment is perhaps, I don't know, somewhat mitigated by that, but it's certainly not something I enjoy. This was designed by committee. This was very corporate. They've almost admitted it. And I think they've all, well, Butler, Iommi, and Osborne have said that, oh God, really, we should have done so much better. It's laughable in, well, it's not laughable. It's actually sad, but it's as if somebody being given the instruction to go in the studio and try and sound like Black Sabbath circa 1970 and 1971, and that's what they would have come up with. Or even today, if you'd asked AI to come up with something that sounds like Black Sabbath circa 1970, 1971, this is what they'd have come up with. It was devoid of originality, and I have to say devoid largely of creativity. There are some good riffs on there. There's some good playing on there. There are some good ideas on there. This is Iommi and Butler. It cannot be completely useless. But End of the Beginning, God is Dead, I'm sure it's the same song with different lyrics. I might be wrong, but it certainly sounds like it. Zeitgeist. Oh yes, I remember. Solitude. We had, what's the other one? Planet Caravan. Yes. Quickly. Something like that. Loner. It's got that jaunty sort of NIB type. Okay. There is nothing on here that one could point at and say, this is completely useless or horrible or worthless. It's just uninspired. It was a huge success, which I'm afraid, Well, what do you say about that? Such is the world in which we live. But no, I mean, this was not a great farewell to the recording career of Black Sabbath. I said in the book I wrote about the Tony Martin era that for years it looked as though Forbidden may have been the last recorded output in their career, and how many thought that would have been an unfitting end. Well, ask you now, especially with the remix of Forbidden. How much worse than 13 is it really? I would argue not. A great deal. So that was that. I can't get enthusiastic about it. I listened to it again. And to be honest with you, I got the luxury or whatever it was edition, and then I subsequently got the other tracks that didn't make the album, and a couple of them actually maybe should have done. Methodemic even was pretty good. I think they even realized that because when they started to play it live, however briefly. The other one, Naivete in Black, mightn't be the greatest thing they've ever written, but at least it has some energy and some drive to it. The rest of it can be somewhat soporific in nature. It's just uninspired. We've heard it all before. Yeah, that's why if they keep mentioning perhaps recording another one, I don't know. Really, under these conditions, guys, don't bother. Seriously, just don't bother. If you can get together, get Bill, who is a songwriter of some renown, some ability, with some left field ideas. If you can actually a genuinely collaborative effort of where you are now, fuck the reputation, fuck the public expectations, just write the record, then fine, we'll take it as it is. But at least to be honest. Alright, the last entry in the disappointing category has to be the Heaven and Hell album, The Devil You Know. Now, this came out prior to 13, but largely came about as Iommi had been trying to get Osborne to record an album, and in frustration reunited with Dio. I'll say blame him. They had a really great initial tour together, and it was nice to see them on stage freed from the burden of the Black Sabbath name and the implication that they would have to play War Pigs, etc. They weren't going to, but then they did. Now, record an album, that is. Now, at the time, prior to its release, I was actually quite looking forward to this. Because compared to Iommi and Butler recording with Dio, or recording to Osborne, which didn't materialize prior to that, I think with Osborne in the band, they're creatively man down. But with Dio there, he's got something to say. Had I been more familiar with Dio's subsequent later solo output, my expectations may have been tempered. Because The Devil You Know does suffer from a lot of that. There's too many mid-paced, doomy, slightly uninspired songs that don't really go anywhere. Yeah, I mean, this doesn't really compare to Heaven and Hell. Even really that well to Dehumanizer. This is not a bad record by any stretch of anybody's imagination, and I would say there are two moments of pure genius, what an overused word, but two moments of pure brilliance on it are Bible Black and Breaking Into Heaven. And I really like Neverwhere, because it kicks ass. The rest is too slow, which was something that plagued Dio's latter day solo efforts, which I only found out in retrospect. What can I say to this? I liked it when I first heard it, but it didn't... When I saw them live on this tour, they only played 3 songs from it, and Bible Black was one of them, but Neverwhere and Breaking Into Heaven were not the other 2, and I'm afraid those that they played were perhaps stronger than some of the other material, but they lost it. They didn't really have that, what it needed to be great live songs. I mean, they were good. It's fine. But no, that was a bit of a disappointment, and it hasn't aged well either. But okay, fair enough, we're all getting older. We're not as creative and vital as we were when we were 20. Well, not quite. Alright, so that's that. They're the only 3 I have to say that I can say, I have been disappointing. Okay, solid but unspectacular. This starts off with Cross Purposes. Although I'll have to... bit of a caveat there. Since the remaster came out last year in the Tony Martin box set, I've discovered a new appreciation for this, though. Perhaps I'm being slightly unfair to it here, but at the time I thought this was a solid but unspectacular effort, hence the name of the category. Some really good stuff on it. I love the title track, actually. It's one of the great Martin era songs. The rest was good, but nothing that really stood out as great. I'm still largely of that opinion. I said this, it's growing on me, but this newfound appreciation for it hasn't been with me long enough, I don't suppose, to actually change my opinion too drastically on this. So yeah, okay, Cross Purposes. Second entry in the solid but unspectacular list would have to be Dehumanizer. I was just so fucking angry when this happened. I was a big fan of the Martin area and liked where they were going with Headless Cross and Tear, only to find out in those pre-internet days, I don't know, magazine perhaps, can't remember, what had happened. But I seem to remember talking to the 3.5 people I knew back in those days that shared my musical taste, that this was not going to last, that this was a desperate move, a cash grab move, and they wouldn't be able to work together. But the album apparently it was like pulling teeth, getting the thing written and recorded, but, we're just here to judge the result. It's one of those things, it's bookended really well. Computer God, After All, really great songs. And I and Buried Alive, really great songs. The rest in the middle is just, it verges, actually for a ballad, Too Late was rather effective, actually. But no, the rest just doesn't do what it needs to do. It's uninspired. I don't know, they were trying to sound more modern, or what passed for modern in 1992. The production is flat and lifeless, something that they played them often. No, sorry. Never got excited about it. I know I accept my opinions are maybe colored by my by the manner in which it came about, but I no re-listened to it recently. My opinion hasn't changed. Saw them on the tour. Was so pissed off. Um, yeah, such a retrograde step. Yeah, never mind. It didn't last, as we knew. Okay, the third entry, and this is going to piss somebody off. The third entry in the solid but unspectacular list is Mob Rules. Why? Because they took, in the days before computers, and probably in the days before this expression became part of the vernacular, this was cut and paste and changed the font. They found a successful formula on Heaven and Hell. And for the first time in their career, they copied themselves. From Black Sabbath to Paranoid, all the way through to Never Say Die, there was progression. May not have liked it, but there was definite progression. They were moving. This was treading water. Okay, it was what it was. And the songs were generally not as strong. It never reached the heights of Heaven and Hell, but it was more consistent, shall we say. Nothing quite as weak as perhaps a couple of the lesser moments on Heaven and Hell, but it certainly never reached the heights. Yeah, and you have to say that, I mean, the subsequent live history of the band, there was very little of this ever once this tour was complete, very little of this until they reunited with Dio 20 odd years later ever got played live. And Iommi has said on numerous occasions that he was not particularly happy with this. That's his opinion, just happens to coincide with mine. Yeah, this was as I said, this was the first time they'd failed to progress. Again, some more shameless self-promotion, but in the book I wrote about Dio and Sabbath, I kind of give Dio some of the blame for this. By taking his subsequent solo career, where it was all very formulaic and all very similar, and was a conceivable continuation from where they were going, which is fine. This was pretty good music he produced, but it is not what I view as Black Sabbath. It lacked that creativity, that experimental edge that had always been associated with it. They would get it back to a slight degree, but no, I'm afraid Mob Rules just doesn't. It's not that great in the context of the Sabbath canon. Next one is going to be The Eternal Idol. It's ironic here, for if you take out the intervening years and the two albums that were recorded, this could actually be the follow-up to the Mob Rules. It very much takes a Heaven and Hell Mob Rules formula that had been established with Dio, and was probably a necessary step after the indistinct and confusing Seventh Star release. This is very much a Black Sabbath record, recorded under awful circumstances. I think with the exception of Jeff Nichols, the band that started recording it had completely changed by the time it was released. Chaos, utter chaos. And yet they still managed to put out something like this. It's a very high quality record. There is not a bad song on it. There is not a particularly weak song on it. There are a couple of standout songs on it. Again, it's well bookended. The title track and The Shining. But it sounds good as well for being a late 80s record. The production still holds up quite well. But it is solid but unspectacular in the grand scheme of things. The last entry in the solid but unspectacular category is Volume 4. This has always struck me as being a 50-50 record. Half of it is up there with the best stuff, some of the best stuff they ever did. The other half is a marked step down. What meaneth I? Well, Wheels of Confusion, Snowblind, Supernaut, Cornucopia, Under the Sun. Great top range Black Sabbath songs. FX is what it is. Laguna Sunrise is mercifully short. Changes, I don't dislike it. St. Vitus Dance, it's actually it's a change. It's quite upbeat and inoffensive. But do you want Black Sabbath to be inoffensive? And Tomorrow's Dream, for some reason, people seem really to like that. I don't dislike it, but I don't think it's that spectacular. The other thing that drags this one down is an absolutely atrocious production. I mean, Born Again has the reputation of having a muddy production, but there's just you can't discern between the instruments in the lower frequencies. It's just one blob of sound. Subsequent remasters have not really done too much. I have improved it to some extent, but no. This, I don't know, maybe the drugs were kicking in at this point. I don't know. Like I said, half of it is great. Half of it is forgettable, or shall we say non-essential. Oh well, there you have it. Okay, the next category is left field outsiders. Well, Never Say Die, obviously, I suppose, just suggests itself, yeah. If one takes the progression from the first album to Sabotage, and say, we could argue that Sabotage was the pinnacle of the band, of what the original incarnation of the band was musically. Technical Ecstasy was an attempt to move into a different direction, but a concerted attempt, a deliberate attempt. Never Say Die was a chaotic attempt to write a follow-up record in very chaotic circumstances. They'd lost the plot. There is some really good stuff on here. And then there's the rest. I don't care what anybody says, I love Air Dance. It is a wonderful piece of music. I understand that this is miles away from anything else that the band had recorded up until this point. But I'm not going to diss it for that. I'm going to diss it for the crap. Breakout, Hard Road, Swinging the Chain. Over to you. The rest has potential. And I think it's an interesting experiment. Didn't set the world alight. The circumstances surrounding it, the band effectively disowned it. I don't think it's that bad. Wanted them to continue in that direction? Probably not. But there is stuff to enjoy here, and I like it. The next one in this list is Forbidden. Now, prior to the remix that came out with the Tony Martin box set, this would have been in the disappointing category. No two ways about it. But the remix has brought new life to this. And there's a lot more going on than perhaps we originally thought. The majority of these songs are actually a lot better than I originally thought. And I was one of those that was tolerant of it. Again, recorded very quickly. They were trying again, I think, to be current. Whatever was current in 1995, so long ago, I can't remember. And I've never really paid any attention. I'm afraid I'm just one of those who listens to what he likes and pays little or scant heed to anything else. But the remix has done wonders, really has done wonders for this. You say, okay, it's a left field outsider. Maybe over time, I will feel more comfortable ranking it somewhere else. Maybe this is this category is for the ones that I'm struggling to place otherwise. That may be a legitimate criticism. But no, this is really worth listening to, not so spatially, only in this remix version. The last entry in this category is Technical Ecstasy, for reasons I've probably already touched on. This was post-Sabotage, Iommi taking the band in a new, more sophisticated direction that largely works, but the doom and gloom had now been put behind them. Okay? It would take a fair amount of time before any of that even hinted at a return. I've always liked this album, but again, the recent, 4 or 5 years ago, remix, Steven Wilson remix, again, did wonders for this, the same way that the remix, the Forbidden remix did for it. This is just such an interesting record. And there are some great moments on it. Okay, there is the turd of turds, otherwise known as Rock and Roll Doctor. But apart from that, I love Backstreet Kids. You Won't Change Me. Dirty Women. All moving parts. Gypsy almost gets there, but there's just something missing with that song. I can't remember what. I don't particularly mind. It's all right. Um, I'm agnostic about it, or ambivalent towards it. But no, it's another one of those things. It is an outlier, but I think it's a bloody good one. They could have gone in this direction. They didn't necessarily have to end this with Never Say Die. This hinted at that they could combine their traditional raw power and heaviness with a more sophisticated approach. Unfortunately, we never got to see this develop. For generally, after Dio joined the band, Iommi went down that route rather than that one. But that's maybe another conversation. All right, we come on to category 4 here. Those that I deem to be almost perfect. Let's start with Tears, shall we? I've already said, and I admit it, I like the Tony Martin era, especially his initial tenure with the band, where they were actually, to some degrees, masters of their own destiny, and they were going the route that they wanted to go. I think Tears is a great follow-up to Headless Cross. I think musically, it's very interesting. It's heavy, but it's creative. Martin's vocals are superb. If only they hadn't recorded Feels Good to Me. Not that it's a bad song, but it stands out here, and not in a good way. Not in a good way. I like the way they were going. Some would say, I don't know, European power metal. Some would say that's a good thing. Some would say that would be not a good thing. I guess it's all a matter of taste. They had recovered some of their, on Headless Cross and Tears, some of their little progressive influences. Not as much as they had in the 70s, but this was far less formulaic, I have to say, than what they produced with Dio, especially the first 2 albums. They were trying little things here and there, different arrangements. They were perhaps, I don't know, more confident. I don't know. I really don't know. Maybe just happier working together. I really like this. Okay, it's almost perfect for me. If it didn't have the ballad on it, I think it would be. Yeah, I may well rank it higher. Following that, Black Sabbath, the debut. I mean, nobody comes into this world fully formed, but God, they were close here. The cover we could probably have done without. I think if you're in America, you didn't even hear it, did you, Evil Woman? You had Wicked World, a superior song. There are parts of Warning that are a bit unnecessary for a studio recording. I really like the sound of this, though. For some reason, I think the production of this stands up a lot better. It's basic, but it stands up a lot better than the next couple of albums, at least. Great separation of instrument. You can hear everybody doing everything. And it's got a heaviness to it, especially the drums. That even on Paranoid, they tended to sound a bit flat, but here they resonate. Sounds acoustic. I really like this. An incredible debut. I've said when discussing Deep Purple's In Rock album that it's on the Sabbath debut. If you'd been around in 1970, young, developing your taste in music, there was very little that could have prepared you for this. It's a milestone in popular music history, rightly so. It just fails somehow. As I said, I could. Maybe there's a degree of naivete in it, which were perfectly understandable. But yeah, it's still a great record, and as I say, we're now into the almost perfect category. So I am, to some degree, splitting hairs. by default. Otherwise, I'd have ended up with two categories, which would rather defeat the point of the exercise, would it not? So, indulge me. The next entry is Heaven and Hell. You have to see this in context, I think. If we accept that they lost their way with Never Say Die, with the upheaval of Osborne Guy, with the complete, well, almost complete change in the rock world, the self-indulgent 70s are now given way to the punk-influenced new wave of British heavy metal. Things have changed. They produced the right album at the right time, and it rescued their collective arses. The bands. Dio was at a loose end after having parted ways with Blackmore, and this was a God-sent opportunity for him, and he took it with both hands. There's no two ways about it. This is a great record, generally. I still say that Lady Evil and Walk Away are subpar songs. Pretty nondescript songs. Very rainbow sounding songs. But the rest is great. It worked on this occasion. The fact that perhaps one of the reasons I'm slightly down on Heaven and Hell is that it became the formula going forward far too often. It was at this point, and there's maybe for a myriad of reasons, that the music world had changed, that Iommi felt that their career may have been over, and because Heaven and Hell was a success, because of the new wave of British heavy metal, because of what else was selling around them, that this more direct, more accessible, and it is more accessible, style of music is the way to go. All of which is legitimate. I'm just talking as a fan perspective, but I'm very reluctant to say that this marked the end of Iommi's musical creativity, because that would be wrong. But it issued in a conservative phase, largely. There will be some exceptions. We will get to them. But no, it's a legendary record, at a high point in all their careers. No denying it. The title track, and especially Children of the Sea. Also the last album, well, not the last album, one of the last albums to feature Bill Ward, who'd jumped ship during the subsequent tour. But no, yes, it is legendary. However, I slightly prefer, in context, Headless Cross. And they have things in common, that they both were a statement of intent following a period of flux and confusion, and both succeeded. Headless Cross did not, on a commercial level, succeed anywhere near, or came anywhere near to approaching the commercial success of Heaven and Hell. But that is more a reflection of the time and general public taste than I think it is on the actual quality of the record. There is some great stuff on here. The title track, When Death Calls. I will admit that Devil and Daughter slightly lets the side down a little bit. It's very predictable. Could have been a Heaven and Hell or Mob Rules outtake. Sorry. But on the second side, they're trying stuff. Some may say it's too commercial. I don't see it that way, but I like the little progressive touches on Kill in the Spirit World. I like the fact they're trying. They've let new influences influence them. What else does one do with an influence? It's something different. It would not have appeared on a Dio-fronted album. No. It doesn't fit the formula. Sorry, guys. No. I don't know whether Dio would not have wanted it, or whether it's just the collective chemistry when working with him. But no, we can't imagine this on a Dio-fronted album. Again, much the same, say, with something like Black Moon. Different. It's a different construction. Something different. Call of the Wild maybe, more straight down the thing. And it was another attempt, I think, to get a single. Although they released the title track as a single, but the least commercial thing on the album. And the album closes with Nightwing, which is an absolute masterpiece. As a song, and performances all round. Headless Cross was a huge artistic success. Did great business on mainland Europe. Less so elsewhere. But that's the Martin era, and yeah, that's another discussion. Okay, the last entry in Almost Perfect is Born Again. This is a freak of nature. This is a one-off. Why then is this not one of the left field, what did I call them? Left field outsiders. It's just too good. From start to finish, it's just too good. The possible exception of Digital Bitch. Knowing what we know now, had they included The Fallen, this would be a perfect record. Their performances are amazing. They've got their progressive, their experimental edge back. You cannot imagine Dio singing Disturbing the Priest, or you cannot imagine them composing that song with him in the band. Gillan is out of this world. It did for his voice for a good couple of years afterwards, and it would take him until The House of Blue Light, 4 years later, before he recovered. And he never really recovered. This is probably the last time he was singing at the level of his 70s prime. But it took him 4 years to recover from this. His vocal performance is immense. The songwriting is spectacular. Much overlooked. Much overlooked. The stuff at the title track is a superb composition. Hotline, and especially Keep It Warm. Yes, Gillan's lyrics were not typical Sabbath fare, but do you have to pander to the crowd? I don't know. I've always thought very highly of this album. Yes, its production gets a bad rap, and yes, I'm sure if they do remix it, I will buy it. But because you just do, don't you? But I don't. The production never bothered me, actually. It's part of who it is. Difficult to imagine it sounding differently. As a fantastic achievement. Maybe it's because it was a one-off as well. Could they have followed it up? I don't know. Would their follow-up have been as, repeating the same thing the same way Mob Rules just copied Heaven and Hell? We don't know. It didn't happen, but it's there, and I love it. Okay, then we get to the Indispensables. So anybody with a working knowledge of the band's category will also already know what's coming. I don't have to dwell too much on these. We all know. So Paranoid, because it's Paranoid. Master of Reality. Again, these are iconic. These are genre-defining records. Excuse me. Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, and Sabotage. Being, for me, the absolute pinnacle of their recorded output. Now, if you were to ask me to recommend some records for a newbie, give them a spread, I would probably do something like this. Paranoid, Sabotage, Technical Ecstasy. I think it's important. Heaven and Hell, Born Again, and Headless Cross. And so, look, if you don't like anything on any of these, it is very unlikely that you're going to like the rest of the catalogue. I think that would be a reasonable sample. However, it does to some extent reflect my absolute favourites. As I said, this is, at the end of the day, a ranking video. So my top three are: third place, Headless Cross. Second place, Born Again. And in first place, no surprise, Sabotage. Are my top three Black Sabbath albums. Now, I hope I've given some insight as to how I view the catalogue as a whole and why I do. Again, you can't get away from the subjectivity of this, but I think, as I said, there's not a bad record here. There's nothing that anybody who's watched my Deep Purple rankings will know that there are certain incarnations of the band whose output I really have no time for whatsoever. It's not the same with Black Sabbath, but one has to understand that some things are obviously, and over such a long career, some things are going to be better than others. Anyway, that's my take on it. At this point, I'm going to point this way, isn't it? Yeah, I'm going to thank Leo, who does my graphics and my images. Leo, отличная работа. Спасибо большое. Having done that, I will, I'm going to leave it there. What do we think? Anybody any thoughts? Does this actually give more meaning or more relevance, more context to an album ranking? Does it make any difference? Or does it not? Let me know. I will give this another try with probably Rush or Deep Purple next. I have not yet decided. But that is very much in the pipeline. Are other videos that will be coming out at random. Okay, that be that. I thank you for your attention. You know what to do. Please feel free to comment, to like, to share, to subscribe. And until next time, I say, Mashonkia, keep well.